It's been over a week since Russia first invaded Ukraine, and the world is still reeling from confusion about why this happened in the first place. To a random onlooker, especially from the United States, it may seem a little confusing why Russia would take so much effort and time and lives to invade this country that seems to have no relative significance. To help you better understand what is going on during this time, we've decided to break down this conflict into three major reasons why Russia is invading Ukraine and what that means for the rest of the world. For starters, this is a truly economic battle. Russia is a massive gas and oil state, and that production and exportation of crude gas and oil is something that keeps their country's economy alive. For decades, they would use their pipelines in Ukraine to help ship their natural gas and oil to Europe, which was one of their main customers. However, once the USSR disintegrated and Ukraine became independent, they would eventually start enforcing tariffs on the pipelines that Russia was using, which cost Russia billions of dollars in taxes and tariffs to Ukraine in order to sell their gas to the world. That was a very smart action from Ukraine, but it also forced Russia to move around Ukraine as well to try and get past them into Europe without having to deal with those tariffs. Several years later, with some new technology, there was discoveries that Ukraine had a large amount of natural gas supply on their coastline, otherwise known as where Crimea is. This is what led to the Russian invasion and annexation of Crimea in 2014, because they were after the natural gas deposits that had recently been discovered on the Ukrainian border. This infuriated Ukrainians and led them to block off the main river supply of water to the Crimean Peninsula, which meant that over time the Russians had to spend much more money trying to keep the Crimean Peninsula alive and under control than they did extracting oil and natural gas. Russia's selfish and dominant nature under Putin means that they do not want a competition anywhere close to them in terms of natural gas and oil, and Ukraine would be doing just that at a more convenient location than Russia currently is for European states. One of the other reasons is geographical security. For years, Russia has been a sort of anti-NATO or NATO versus Russia battle of sorts, whether or not it's in direct conflict or not. And the fact of Ukraine joining NATO at any point is something that fuels Putin's nightmares. Now independent countries like Estonia, Lithuania, and Ukraine were buffer countries for Russia when they were both in the Soviet Union, which allowed Russia and the leading party to effectively block off parts of Western civilization from encroaching on what they deemed their space or their empire. Now that many of those states like Estonia and Lithuania have actually joined NATO, NATO's influence, something that Russia thinks in their head, especially Putin, that is a negative influence that they are so close to Russia, has slowly creeped up on Russian borders. And if Ukraine were to join, that would effectively put Russian NATO forces even closer to Russia's borders. For Putin, he simply does not want Ukraine to fall into the hands of NATO, and he believes that if he's able to invade the country, he'll be able to stop that, or at least get terms that will prevent NATO from picking up Ukraine as well. The final reason would just be Putin's desire to restore Russia to its previous glory. We've heard this all before in the United States with Donald Trump and his Make America Great Again slogan, but it's the same concept with Russia and Putin, who has been stressing his want to return the Russian Empire to its previous glory since his election. This is a sort of drive to reclaim these lands that were stolen away and that broke away during the disintegration of the Soviet Union, and his desire to return these states to the glory of Russia. However, in that modern day present time, these states are truly independent and owe nothing to Russia at this current point. There is no reason for them to be invaded. They're their own people, they're their own countries, they deserve their own respect and their own privacy from Russia. However, Putin thinks otherwise and now has decided to invade Ukraine in an attempt to start and continue this process of returning Russia to its former glory. As for the current situation, it's unknown whether NATO forces will truly step in or whether we will continue to just send aid and military weapons to Ukraine. It's a very complicated and interesting process, and whether or not NATO actually joins the war and we have true conflict We hope not. We hope that there is able to be a ceasefire or some sort of peace talks that are able to happen, prevent much more loss of life. That is always the key here. And hopefully that with these military aid, we want to believe that that resistance will help to slow down the Russian advance and hopefully negotiate peace talks soon. Reporting for Scott Center News, I'm Hayes Gabbery.